I have a certain nostalgia for the ideals of the American Revolution and the Federalists and all that. I agree, it has been entirely subverted because of what you mentioned, money, and one other factor, which I haven't mentioned this morning, but your comment gives permission, propaganda. The people who created the American Union had no concept of the perverseness and the sophistication that the mass manipulation of people would achieve in the centuries ahead. We call ourselves freely informed citizens. What we really are propagandized factions set one against another for the purposes of the rulers. That's why we can have such an infantile, they call this an election. And they always say, in Russia they don't have elections. It's just terrible over there. But here you get to choose between a geek or a turkey. And it's just, it is infantile. I agree with everything you're saying about that it will come from sharing, it will come from eliminating the profit motive. It's interesting, the history of the profit motive. In the Middle Ages, making interest on money was a sin. It's the sin of usury. And Jews could not own land in the Middle Ages. They were ghettoized. They had no way to pull themselves up from the poverty of the ghetto, and they were not Christians, so they were allowed, they became the first bankers. This is the basis of the myth that anti-Semitism propagates, that the Jews are somehow have their hands on all the money and run everything. If they had their hands originally on any money, it was because nobody else was allowed to deal with it. And the profit, the making of interest and the notion of profit created urbanism, which created then a large middle class that was not Jewish, but that was bourgeois, and that had no land. So its path to wealth was through investment and reinvestment, and that then created the modern world. But it should be seen as a temporary situation, as all historical episodes should be seen as merely temporary. A social convention which serves at one point can later become toxic and destructive. And I think we have reached the point where the profit motive is utterly toxic and destructive. And the notion that single people or single corporate boards should control hundreds of billions of dollars, we cannot even conceive of what that kind of money means. The entire New Age, from Lynn Andrews through me and back to the iridologists and forward to you name it, is being run. Probably the entire budget for the entire thing over the past 5 years has been less than the cost of a single B-1 bomber. They have an order in for 300 B-1 bombers, the government does. We don't realize where the money is and how much of it there is, how incomparably wealthy we all would be if the money were fairly distributed. And I'm not attacking millionaires either. If somebody can get it together to have a couple of $1 million, more power to them. They're not oppressing anybody. It's the people who have $500 million or $1.8 billion and like that. These are inconceivable amounts of money. They are in fact not money at all, inconceivable amounts of power. And without being some kind of flag-waving red, I think you can advocate a little more sane distribution of the fruits of the earth, which actually belong to the people who create the fruits of the earth. I mean, I'm edging toward the word workers to my own amazement. But we need to think about this. The fact that this country does not have a national health care system is obscene, inconceivable. Why are we so namby-pamby that we don't pour into the streets and hang a few of these politicians who won't give us a national health care system? It would be good for them. There's nothing like that to sober up a government and focus it on what needs to be done, while having broken several federal laws.